Well, the big order also by the Supreme Court today is on the sedition law. The 162-year-old colonial era law has been put on hold by the Supreme Court while the government, as it has promised, goes into reconsidering it. The Supreme Court basically has said that those jailed for sedition currently can move court for bail immediately, and all sedition cases will be kept in abeyance. No new FIRs will be registered as far as sedition matters are concerned. And we heard within hours of the Supreme Court's ruling today, the Rajasthan High Court has stayed a sedition case against a television journalist who was booked by the Rajasthan police for the same. Well, Mahua Moitra, Lok Sabha MP from the Trinamool Congress, is someone who's been at the forefront of this fight against the sedition law. Mahua Moitra, thanks very much for being with us. A huge day, actually, although there have been some skeptical about how this would work on the ground. How do you see this?
No, definitely it's a historic day, Nidhi, not just for you and me, but I think for civilized society and for Indian democracy. I think going forward, there are two things to remember. One is that the sedition law has been on the books since 1870. That's 150 years. Was never really examined by the Supreme Court until 1962, when during Kedarnath Singh versus State of Bihar, a 5-judge bench laid down that it upheld the constitutional validity of the law, but it said that it would have to pass the test of sedition, would have to pass the test of imminent lawless action. So you would have to do something inciting violence that would immediately subvert the government. So mere criticism of the government via constitutional means could not be considered as sedition. This law was there from 1962. If you've seen in the last 5 to 7 years, no one's paid attention to what really Kedarnath Singh laid down, what the judgment laid down. And you had all sorts of people misusing and abusing this law of sedition. And this became like a very strong tool in the hands of authorities to lock up people. And remember, sedition is you can arrest without a warrant. There is really no due process of law in this. You had a comedian who was yet to crack a joke who was arrested. You had a journalist who was yet to write a report who was arrested. So you see, it leads itself to a great deal of misuse. So this was important that the courts decided this. And I'm happy to be one of the petitioners who took it. And I'm very happy that my lawyer, Senior Advocate Gopal Shankar Narayanan, argued it fabulously in court.
Let me just read out the Law Minister Kiren Rijiju's reaction to today's verdict. And he said that the courts should respect the government. We respect the courts. We have a clear demarcation and boundary, and that Lakshman Rekha should not be crossed by anybody. Doesn't sound too happy with what's happened.
No, clearly he doesn't sound too happy because, I don't blame Kiren. Kiren's a good guy. I don't blame him. He's obviously the law minister. He's got nothing to do except sort of parrot his master's voice. So let's keep him personally out of this. But if you see what the government did, it was an absolutely shameful ploy. The government has been in power for 8 years. If they wanted to do anything to this law, as they have done to so many laws, they had every right to do it. They have brute majority. What the government did just 3 days ago when this came up was to come in and say, first the Attorney General said, I will argue it, and the Solicitor General said, no, the courts should stay out of it. Then the Solicitor General comes and says, we are reconsidering it, so you guys please stay out of it. Look at the word reconsider. The government could have come out and said revoke. If they wanted to be serious, they could say we are revoking the law. They said reconsider. What reconsider can also mean is they will amend the law. So knowing this government, and the trust deficit, frankly, is so between civil society and government is so large at this point, the government could very well have brought in an amendment where they will put in something like what they said in court, that an SP or some officer will have to pass every case of sedition. So they would still keep it in the books and amend it, which would come under the definition of reconsideration. And the government was not willing to put any timeline. When the court asked them, come back at 10:30, Mr. Mehta, and tell us, he was unwilling to put anything on the table. So under those circumstances, my lawyer had put in a one-page submission in which it said that while the government reconsiders it, no new FIRs can be filed. All those who have been arrested have immediate right of bail, and everyone has to be instructed not to entertain or investigate anything under 124A. If you read the order, that's pretty much what the Supreme Court has laid down. So while the government is reconsidering it, which I think is frankly just another term for putting it on the back burner, they are reconsidering the entire CRPC, for God's sakes. So, I think this is great that we have got remedies and that nobody can proceed on this antiquated colonial law till such time.
quick last question, Mahua Moitra. We also had, on the marital rape issue, a split verdict from the Delhi High Court today. The judges couldn't agree on this. One judge saying that yes, it should be criminalized, the other saying no, not, and therefore this will go to the Supreme Court as well. As a woman, as a member of parliament, how do you feel about this?
Look, this is another thing where the government has dragged its feet. It put its first affidavit in 2017. When this case came up in the Delhi High Court, they said we need more time. And kudos to the judges who said that this can't go on forever and ever. We will hear the other parties. And they have reserved judgment and they've passed it. It's a sad thing they couldn't agree. But there's over 100 countries have criminalized marital rape. The basic point is this: as a human being, forget male or female, as a human being, my most fundamental right is over my own body, right? You decide when you breathe, you decide when you raise your hand, you decide when you go to the toilet. These are decisions that nobody can take away from you. There's a right of consent. Your husband cannot vote for you. Your husband cannot go to the bank and sign for you, right? The principle of consent is dependent on every individual. Does a woman in India sign away the right of consent, this most fundamental right over her own body, about sexual freedom, about sexual expression, the minute that she is married? And especially in our own country, when these are choices not even made of her own volition. So the concept of rape is rape. It is irrelevant whether a man rapes me who is not my husband. So somebody could rape me the night before marriage and he would technically be a rapist. And the next day he rapes me and I can't file because it's an exception. So think about this as a travesty of justice. And again, no civilized society should have this on their books. And I sincerely hope that we take it to the Supreme Court and that India moves forward on this.
All right, Mahua Moitra, thanks very much for joining us on those two big issues making headlines in the country today. Thank you very much. We'll take a quick break. We'll be back with much more on the other side.